part of this wonderful organization, Live On New York, and they have allowed us to have our meeting here tonight, and we will ask her to say a few words about it later in the program. I'm Barbara Eddington. I am from the League of Women Voters, and I'm a board member, and I'm chair of the Voter Services Committee, and I do a lot of these trainings, but I haven't done one where I'm being filmed or where we're using PowerPoint, so this is one of my firsts. We're going to be working through the workbook that you have, and everybody has one, access to it, right? Excellent. Let me tell you a little bit about the League of Women Voters. We are a nonpartisan organization, and that means we do not support or oppose any political candidate or any political party. We do, however, lobby for issues. And I'll be talking about some of the issues that we're working on this year that has to do with election reform. Election rules are made state by state. So New York State has its own rules, as you probably learned throughout the last major elections, how each state is so different on how they do their primaries and how they do their voting. And the League of Women Voters in New York State and in New York City believe that there's a lot of work that can be done to improve how we do it here. And the League, I represent the New York City chapter. We also have a New York State chapter and a U.S. chapter. So when you become a member of your local League of Women Voters, you also become a member of your state and your federal. And the policies that we lobby for are based on a consensus of all the members of the country of the League of Women Voters, how we feel about different issues that are being presented. We're very focused on legislation and trying to move the needle that way. So that's, in New York City, last year we registered about 800 people. We staffed 100 events with volunteers like yourselves, like myself, I'm also a volunteer. We trained more than 400 people at workshops like this one. Those events included things like Student Voter Registration Day and National Voter Registration Day. Student Voter Registration Day is held annually in March in New York City. Hi, welcome. And National is held in September, and that might get your head around some of the activities and dates that are going to be coming up if you want to do work more than in March. Come on. Sorry. How we fix things. Oh. This is weird. Oh, we had it before. I'm sorry, guys. What's going on? Is this, am I blocking it? Huh. I hope this isn't going to happen with every slide. So, what I'd like to hear from you is, I would assume most of you are here to work on Saturday. How many here are to work at the march on Saturday? Awesome. How many here are going to be working on voter registration drives at other times throughout the year? Awesome. If I may, could I ask some of you to tell me then what organizations you're here working with if you're going to be going out to do voter registration drives, or if you're here as an individual and want to, or just doing for the march, if we can just go around the room. If I could just ask quickly, what organization are you here with? And,
I'm not here with a particular organization. I worked with Planned Parenthood for 25 years, but I'm thinking of Hazel and I are in a book group together. One of the things that our book group has been doing is looking for something meaningful to do that can really make a difference. So there's an event at the Cooper Union in early February. We thought maybe we'd try to set up a voter registration before that.
great, thank you.
So, yeah, to work in our book group, I also live right by Bryant Park, which is one of the most fabulous places in the spring for all the workers in the area to come by. I mean, it's really lively. It's not that full of tourists. And maybe just set up a regular voter registration drive, you know, in Bryant Park, you know, and to be able to say, okay, well, Wednesdays, there's always going to be a table there. We thought that would be a great idea.
Great.
I'm here for the march, but I would like to participate in the drives for the League of the Future.
Great, wonderful, thank you.
Same for me, no particular organization. I just
Okay.
want to participate.
Great.
Same for me.
Same?
Same.
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 Same. That's the same? Okay.
Yeah.
Same?
Same.
Same?
Same.
Okay.
I'm working on Saturday.
You're working on Saturday, excellent.
I'm gonna work on swing left.
Swing left, okay, excellent. And have you been out doing drives with them yet, or not?
Not in our district.
Okay, great.
Can you tell us what swing left is?
Want to tell them?
Oh, sure. We're working to swing the House towards the Democrats in 2018's election. So doing the voter registration drives, I know we have to be quite nonpartisan doing it, but it is just to try to get more voters involved in the 2018 election.
Yeah, just help out my wife more in terms of registering.
Great.
I think I can do more training. Because I've been doing.
You've been doing it, yeah. But you're gonna learn how to be a trainer.
That's right.
That's why you're here. Because she's gonna go out and do this again for other kids. Thank you for coming.
I'm here for the march, but definitely interested in going forward and participating in the League of the Future.
Wonderful, thank you. Same?
It's for the march.
March? The march?
For the march and see maybe in the future.
And maybe more?
Same.
Same? Same?
Same.
Same? Same, excellent, excellent. So we've been doing this, there's more seats up front too. With a lot of groups like Swing Left, like Indivisibles, there's a lot of groups that got organized, book clubs that are wanting to do something, and we are thrilled to be able to teach you how to do that something. If you're going to be participating with the League of Women Voters at any of our drives, we make you promise that it's a nonpartisan outreach. Of course, if you're working with a different organization, you're on your own, you just can't use the League materials at your table. But you're certainly right to learn how to do the voter registration so that it's done appropriately no matter where you're doing it or who you're doing it for. Oh, this is not good. What should I be aiming at?
Where is it coming from? Up there?
It's not working.
I can't seem to advance my slides.
I just did it for you.
You did it for me?
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Your slide.
You'll be my slide advancer. I have a staff.
Say, add that to my resume. I'm advanced slide.
The main thing we want you to know at the end of this training is maybe you won't know every answer, and that's okay. Just make sure that you're honest about that when you're out on the street. Just say you don't know, and ideally, if there's a way to get back to them with the answer, that's the best method. And the way to get those answers is either to call the League's office or to call your Board of Elections. Next slide. So what I like to do is start with the dates of elections coming up in 2018. I have made a note on some of our slides where we're going to be in the training manual. So I jump around a little bit in the training manual because I start with the dates and then I'll come back to the beginning and walk through it that way. But on page 16, you'll see a list of the dates coming up. We have our first primary in June. Then the state and local primary is in September, the general election's in November.
Hold on.
Yeah,
Some of the ladies in the back don't have copies. Do you have any extra?
yes, I do.
Just so
So
they can look on.
they can borrow or buy. Here we go.
These cost $10, ladies, so if you want to buy them. Yep. You can download it after this, but so you can look on them.
New York State has two primaries, and sometimes we even have special elections. So sometimes we ask our voters to get out up to 4 times, maybe 5 times a year to vote. This is one of the things that the league is trying to help change and consolidate these primaries and move our state and local primaries to the June date where the federal primary is. So that's just one thing that we're working on, working to, with our legislators in Albany. We fear that that impacts some of the voter fatigue, just getting out. And I don't know if you know, New York State has one of the lowest voter turnout records in the country. We're like number 47 or something like that. It's appalling. And so we, the league, think a lot of these kinds of things are what's affecting that. So we're trying to make that better. Next slide, please. They're not the only dates you need to know. And again, we're going to be talking, that's good, stay there. Registration deadlines. Now, New York State requires that you apply to register to vote 25 days before the election that you're going to participate in. 25 days. To make it easier, what I like to do is just figure it's a month, because it makes it easier in my head. But we also tell our volunteers to not really try to push right up against that deadline date when you're handing in applications to the Board of Elections. They do get overwhelmed, and you want to make sure it gets in their hands. So make sure when you're setting up your voter registration drives, if you're going to do any in the future working with us, you'll see that we try to have them done at least a month before the elections. That to change your where am I? The voter registration is for new voters. It's also for anybody who needs to change their address, change their name before the election. Those deadlines are the same. It's still that 25 days or a month. Next slide, please.
Next slide, please.
Sorry.
Party enrollment. This is kind of a sticky wicket in New York State. We have what is called the sit-out rule for primaries, where if you want to change, if you're already a registered voter and you want to change your your party affiliation, you have to do it 25 days before the general election of the preceding year. Let me say that again. 25 days before the general election of the preceding year. So as we're working with already registered voters in 2018, it's too late for them to change their political party for the 2018 election. They can, however, do it now for the next presidential primary or presidential election or 2019. But it takes a year in advance. Yes.
Question.
Yes.
So if I decided to change my party affiliation today,
Yes.
and there's a primary later this year.
Yes.
And I vote in that primary based on my prior affiliation.
Are you in your old party?
Right.
You can vote in your old party this year. You can't vote in the party you're changing to until next year. Does that make sense? No, it doesn't make sense. Are you understanding that? All right, so let me ask you a question. If I wanted to change from a blank, let's say I wasn't affiliated with any party, and now I want to be a member of the Working Families Party, can I vote in the Working Families primary this year?
Yes, if you register 25 days before.
Say that again?
Yes, if you register 25 days before the primary, if you're a new voter.
If you're a new voter, okay, good. So that's the distinction. If you're a new voter, you can vote in this year's primaries. If you're a registered voter and are changing, and that's probably what a lot of the folks in your swing left are going to be trying to do. That's what we found in the last presidential election. There were a lot of folks who thought they were registered and weren't registered in the party. So they couldn't vote in the Democratic primary because it was the first year that it actually made a difference in New York State, right? Usually it makes no difference by the time it gets here, the decisions are made. But we strongly believe that, you know, voting in a primary is really where your vote counts the most because it's a direct vote, right? So we like to encourage people to sign up for a party, but it's that sticky wicket of the changing the year before. And again, that's something that we are working on lobbying for, is to try to do same-day voter registration, try to move that up. We think that's going to be a longer shot to work on. Yes?
Can you register without being affiliated with any party?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then is it 25 days or is it a year? Like if you go from having no party, if you're a registered voter, to wanting to become affiliated with a party, do you have to wait 25 days or the year?
The year. Because you're already a registered voter, so you're changing from blank to
Okay.
something. So that's a change. And it takes that 25 days before, you know, for the preceding year.
And the parties are, all of them, not just Republican, Democrat, but also Greg's wife and
All of them.
all of them.
Yep. And we'll go through that a little more in detail.
So
Yes?
when we're encouraging people to vote, new
Yes.
voters to vote, do we explain to them why it's important for them, or what the advantage to registering in a party might be?
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean,
It's all about
we talk
education.
about that,
It's all
right?
about education, telling them their options.
Because if you don't register in a party, you can't vote in that primary.
You can't vote in that primary. In New York State, it's a closed primary system. You can only vote in that primary if you're registered in that party.
Is that only true in New York State?
That's, well,
Different-
not only New York
different
State,
states
but
are-
every
oh,
state is
okay.
different, yeah. Some states allow you to vote in any primary, regardless of what party you're affiliated
Okay.
with. Okay. So now we're gonna, kind of walk through how to set up the drive. We're going to page 3 of the training manual, and you can go to the depth of it. So, we have a great venue on Saturday. How awesome is that? For the folks who are working on Saturday, what we're going to be doing is assigning people by block. The marchers have organized the march to be queued up from 61st Street as far up as it goes. And Kiana, you can correct me when I'm going off the rails here. They estimate about 1,000 people fit in each block. Right now, they're topping over 50,000 have registered to march. So we know we're going to have at least 50 blocks to cover. On Saturday, what we're doing is we're organizing with a captain per block, and each captain will be assigned 3 or 4 volunteers to work with them. And we want all those volunteers trained because you're going to be on your own in those crowds. You are going to be asked to bring with you, I don't know if you got this email or not. If you didn't, we'll send it out again. But every volunteer is going to be asked to bring this official volunteer badge so that the police will allow you into those blocks, into those pens, so you can get in and out of them. Okay? Without this, you will not be allowed in to do the job on Saturday. Did everybody get that email with this attachment? Okay, awesome. We have organized the supplies for you on Saturday. Each of your captains will have something sturdy to write on, like a clipboard. We didn't want to pack clipboards. We thought they would be too heavy and bulky to carry. So we're giving you like cardboard. We're giving you voter registration applications. We're giving you pens and stickers. I think we're going to get stickers on Saturday.
Yes.
So, yes.
And you also mentioned something in the email about making the banner, the yellow banner.
Yeah, that's if you're marching with the League of Women Voters.
Oh, okay.
We're going to be collecting at about 79th and Central Park West to march behind the League of Women Voters banner, and we're asking all of our marchers to wear a sash. If you're not going to march with us, you don't need to wear a sash.
Okay.
Or you don't have to go with us at 79th Street, but you can, march. But the workers on Saturday are asked to check in at 72nd Street, and the bus is going to be on 72nd Street or on, we think it's going to be at 72nd Street in Central Park West, where we're going to have all your names on lists. We're going to have all our captains show up. They're going to check in. We're going to peel off the first 4, march off with that captain. Next captain, next 4, march off. The captain will have your supplies. So you don't have to bring anything unless you have your most favorite pen. But the captains are going to be given armbands so we can identify them. I'm not sure if we're doing armbands for all the volunteers. We are.
The voter registration volunteers will have an armband of, I think it's yellow and green.
Oh, so everybody here will have a armband. Awesome, we get armbands. And if you're a league, yeah, sash, we're gonna have so much. That'd be awesome. Which is, Kiana, I'm gonna keep looking at you for these answers.
Yep.
Kiana is part of the Women's March Alliance, and she's been working on the actual logistics of setting this up.
Okay.
There's been some confusion on where the bus is gonna be.
So the bus will be at 7, I'm from Long Island, so the reason why there's confusion is because I don't know the difference between Central Park West and 8th Avenue. But that, full disclosure, I admit where I'm from, where I'm wrong, lo siento. So on my map that I received, it said 8th Avenue. Sorry, that's not right. Another email will be sent out to everyone. It'll specify 72nd and Central Park West. That is where the bus will be. However, for those of you in this room and for past trainees and on Saturday, you're expected to arrive between 8:30 and 9:30. The bus will not be there until 10. The reason that your time is different from the bus is because I may be by myself. I pray to God I won't. I have people who are supposed to help me, but I'm managing almost 200 plus volunteers. So you guys are there early because if something goes wrong, I have ample time to make corrections as necessary.
What is the bus thing for?
The bus is the coolest thing. So we have a volunteer driving it up from southern New Jersey, and he's got it painted red, white, and blue, and he calls it the Bus for Progress. And he takes it to all events, and he does voter registration in New Jersey all over the place, and he goes in parades, and he offered to bring this bus, and we were like, that's the coolest thing, because we will see it, instead of trying to find poor Kiana down there.
Who's like average height.
It's gonna be great. So the bus is gonna be key for everybody on Saturday, because that's gonna be the place where you're gonna check in. That's also a place where we're housing extra supplies in case your block runs out. It's also the place where we're going to be asking to collect the supplies at the end. If you can make it back to 72nd Street, great. If you can't, we're going to ask you to deposit the supplies at the end of the march at the League of Women Voters offices, which is on 43rd Street between 5th and 6th. So we're right at the end of the march. And our address should be all over your training manuals there. 4 West 43rd Street. And we've got volunteers ready there to collect the stuff as you bring it in. We hope you don't have to carry it with you on the march. We're very concerned if you actually get completed applications. We want to make sure they're safe and secure. We don't, right now it's not supposed to rain, but who knows? We don't want to have them messed up in any way. If you can bring it back to the bus, please do. If you can't, bring it to us at the League's office. Anyway, so, yes.
Sorry. So you said, 50,000 people, 1,000 people walk. The march actually begins the 61st, or that it will back up, I'm asking, to 110. Possibly.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really know how many people are coming. Right?
So where do you think the registration is gonna be, between the 61st and 110th, or?
Well, I think we'll play that on the day, right?
Yeah, so the way this is set up as for right now, there are 2 shifts. So you have a shift that's, you have one shift that starts at 10, goes from 10 to 2 o'clock, another shift that starts at 1:30 and goes to 5. Technically, and you know, on the day of the march, this most likely will change. It's organized chaos. You come to me at 72nd. The length of the march goes from 72nd to Columbus Circle, and then from Columbus Circle to 6th Avenue, and then down to Bryant Park. So that's about 28 blocks. So I've broken it up into 5 separate zones. So when you come to see me, if you're with the League of Women, you have a specific zone that you're going to be in. If you just registered with me individually, there's a separate location for you to be with that's closer to the beginning of the march. Because I imagine, I'm trying to do this in a way so that if you want to actually march after you registered voters, you can. And you know, you're not all the way at the opposite end, which is a bit difficult for the League of Women Voters, but you guys have so many people. But essentially what's going to happen is if you registered individually, you're closer to the beginning of the march, which is at 75th and moving upward. And if you're with the League of Women Voters, you're kind of towards Columbus Circle and closer to the end, by like where Columbus Circle the stage is and 43rd where the march ends. Keep in mind, you know, again, I'm from Long Island, so I don't know how, this is a long march for me, because this is like, what, 28 blocks? City blocks are different from Long Island blocks. We drive everywhere, everything is 3 minutes, in actuality it's 30. So even if you are in the Columbus Circle towards the end of the march, that's still a pretty decent march walk. You can still take photos and say, I marched, it counts. I kept that in mind. Does that make sense?
I'm confused, actually.
But
I didn't realize you were going to try voter registration the whole length of the march route. I thought you were just doing it in the queuing up section.
So I'm trying to, because this is why the organizations are different, because you guys have almost 50 plus marchers all on your own.
We have 300. Yeah.
Well, boop to my number.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to keep you guys closer to the stage so that the same situation with the individuals, you can still march, but you're also still close to where your endpoint is, because I'm imagining that you guys will be able to cover one whole zone with your volunteers and marchers on your own.
Yeah.
So that's why everything is in a separate zone. So I imagine between you and the other 3 organizations, you guys will cover one zone. I have another 3 organizations that'll cover one zone. And this way you guys will be in a position so that you're there, but you can also still march. Does that clarify?
Okay, yeah.
I just have one quick question. The march actually starts at 11, right?
Technically, if you need a specific time, let's say like 12:31, March lineup is at 10. There's a rally. The March lineup is from like 10 to 11. The rally is from like 11 to 12, 12:30. The march is from 12:30 to 1. All of this means meh. So the estimated time is 11, but that's kind of an estimated time. So the hope is that the march starts at 11. I just do voter registration.
So that sounds, like if you're assigned to a zone far away from the bus, you won't be able to get back up to the bus, so.
Right.
So then we really do ask you to drop off the materials at the league's office on West 43rd Street. Yes?
How can we personally bring them to the Board of Election? Because it's easy for me to just get to the Board of Election in the room.
We want to count. I mean, we're going to ask our captains to count how many were done that day. We really want a tally of how many were done. But it depends on if you have extra materials too that you want to get rid of, you don't want to march with. If there's a way to get it back to the bus, or give it back to your captain. You can always give it back to your captain, and the captain can deliver it to us. But thank you, if you wanted to deliver some. I mean, I prefer not, so we can count them.
But I could give you a count.
It's also for, the Women's March Alliance wants to tally it because we're doing a national voter registration, so we need you to bring them back so that we can add to our national tally.
Okay.
Plus, in your packets, you'll have some New Jersey applications as well, because we're not sure where our marchers are coming from on Saturday, right? We only have New York City applications. So we're gonna need to check to make sure if they're from upstate, if they're from New Jersey. We're gonna have to do that division at the league's office that afternoon so we can triage it and get it to the right places and put the right addresses on them. Yes?
So, what do we do if we have someone who is with us, in my case, it's a 16-year-old child? Can she stay with me, and like, if I'm going off in a group of 4, does she go with me? We give her one of those, and she just tags along and hands out stickers?
What else are you not gonna leave her alone?
Is she legally allowed to, hand out registration forms?
I believe so. I think 16 is okay. She's not trained, of course, right? If you can train her. Because you're gonna be so well trained tonight.
Yes.
You can train her. Yes. Great, another pair of hands, awesome. And we'll just have her assigned with you when you both show up with your volunteer. Because our list keeps fluctuating, people are dropping out and adding on every hour, so that's great. So when you're setting up a drive of your own, you will have to do this organization before you go out. You'll need to find the venue, you'll need to get your materials together, you need the blue or black pen, because it has to be signed in blue or black. You can't have the 16-year-old fancy pink pen, okay? The eligibility to register, and I'm going to go through each of these. We're now on page 4 of the training manual. So, citizen of the United States, that includes anybody born in Puerto Rico, any Guam, U.S. Virgin Islands. Green card holders cannot register to vote. They are not citizens. 18 years old by election day, they can register to vote as long as they're going to turn 18 by the end of the year, or 18 on election day. So sometimes when we go into high schools, we don't have all 18-year-olds there, but we can register them at 17 as long as they can vote as long as they're 18 by the day. If they're going to not turn 18 until December, they can register this year and be ready for next year. If they turn 18 in 2019, however, they can't register until 2019. That make sense? Okay. Residing in New York City, you must be a resident of the city for at least 30 days. Very small number. So this is also how we are able to reach out to college students, because they're in the city 30 days before elections. Voting with a criminal record. This is one thing that New York State does differ from a lot of other states. In our state, if you've done the time, you can re-register to vote. You get your voting privileges back. In other states, if you've been convicted, you lose it forever. in New York State, that is not the case. So oftentimes, we hear, you know, I can't register to vote, and that is oftentimes a reason. Either they're not a citizen or they have a criminal history, and not that you want to cry, but that's something that you're knowledgeable to be able to say, you know, if you've done your time, if you're not on parole or you're out of, you know, jail, you can certainly vote now. You have to re-register. Once you're convicted, you come off the voting rolls. Your name comes off. So you do have to re-register to come back on, but in New York State, you are able to vote again. Yes?
If someone's serving a time-on sentence for felony conviction in a different manner than prison or parole, are they also not eligible to vote?
I don't know the answer. I don't know what other way that's served.
Probation or like.
Probation, I believe, is non-felony.
No, probation, if you're on probation, you are allowed to register and vote. It's only if you're on parole that you can't vote.
Right. So I thought that probation was with a different level of offense. So, but she's right. Probation, yes, you can. Yes.
Do you have an example of how we can approach people and asking them if they are interested in registering to vote?
I do. In fact, we're going to have that little role play at the end of this. Okay. How about that? Next slide. Voting options for college students. So this is the 30-day thing. Some of them, if they've come to New York City to come to college from another New York State area, wherever they come from, they have the choice of whether to register here or to vote absentee at home. We don't know what the rules are at their home unless it's a New York State home. If it's another state, they have to find that out on their own. If it's a New York State home, they can apply for an absentee ballot, and they can get that in the mail, and they can vote absentee because they will be away from their primary residence, or they could register at their college in New York City 30 days prior to the election. Yes?
If they are, would that make them a new voter, new registrant, or a change?
It would be a change. If they're registered at home,
Right.
then it would be a change.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
Asking if they're filling out the registration there as a new voter or as an existing voter. If they're registered at home, then they're an existing voter and they're just changing their address, basically. It's a re-registration.
So the party changing then
Applies to them too.
applies to them too,
Yeah.
but only if they're changing parties. If they're staying in their same party,
They're just
will
changing
still-
their address.
They're just changing their address.
Right. So that they'll be assigned a new polling place.
And they can go to the primary.
If they're registered in that primary? Yes, absolutely.
So they don't have to fill out a form.
Well, they have to fill it out for the new address. Right, they change their address. Just like every millennial in the city of New York City, they move every 10 minutes. And that also catches our folks off guard, that when you move, you have to re-register. Because you're going to be assigned a new polling place where you live now. So I just handed out the actual application, and I would like to invite Karen to come up, if you may, because the first thing I want to point out to you when you look at this application is there is a flap on top. And this flap is thanks to Karen and her organization.
The flap is important. You'll remember the flap. So my organization, the office that you guys are in, is called Live On New York. And Live On New York helps people who need life-saving transplants. So, hence the flap. So how is it connected to voter registration? For 10 years. I've been with Live On New York for about 13. we lobby to make organ donation part of normal culture, okay? And why it's so critical and important in New York State is because New York, out of all the 50 states, is 50th in the number of its residents who are registered to be organ donors. So most states have over 50% of their residents. New York has 30%. So that means if you needed a life-saving transplant in New York, you wait twice as long as every other state in the country. Most people in New York will wait for a life-saving transplant a minimum of 5.5 to 7 years. That's a minimum. Most people wait longer than that. So New York State is the only state that allows you to register to be an organ donor when you register to vote. And because of that, since 2008, when it was enacted, we have probably registered more than 500,000 people via voter registration. But we are also trained to also conduct voter registration drives. So we conduct hundreds of them. This is a project that I actually handle. And we partner with groups like the League of Women Voters, the NAACP, New York City Votes, and we do drives, our own drives across our area. So that's specifically what we handle. The posters actually are donors, donor families, and recipients. We don't use actors and actresses, we use real people. And the names of the people that are around this room are people who have donated from 1999 to 2009. Their first name and last initial. So our mission as an organization is not just to save lives, it's to educate people. We do it through voter registration and through our mission, which is life-saving transplants. So we are part of the drives, and we do tons of drives ourselves.
Is there a maximum age for organ
There
donation?
isn't actually. We've had donors
Is
in their
not?
90s. Because it depends on the health of the individual, and sometimes people actually at older ages are healthier than younger. I say that to my daughter all the time.
Is that, the information you just provided us, you know, if we happen to forget or something like that, is that gonna be available either in this packet or online for us?
What we can provide, because I'm gonna be out there
Right.
with our boots on the ground with you guys,
Cool.
registering people. We have some great little fact sheets that we can give you. It is a really user-friendly, like one-pager. It's not like you need to remember statistics. We think that we don't want you to advocate, but we just want to ask people the question. What we found is about half the people that register to vote during our drives also register to be organ donors. Just because of the ease of it. Most people go to the DMV to do it, but who wants to go back to the DMV unless you absolutely have to, right? So this is an easy way for people to do it. A lot of people are registering to vote because they want to make a difference, and organ donation is an easy way to do that. Yes.
In terms of these forms, how do we respond if someone says, I'm already registered to vote, but I want to be an organ donor?
You can have them just do this little thing. Yes, and this actually, I say, is a user-friendly version because our normal forms go into a lot of detail that it's just not as user-friendly. I'll just say that. Okay? So we're going to be out there with you. A lot of my volunteers have been touched by donations, so you may have some people out there who tell their story. But we have probably about 20, 25 volunteers that are going to be with us on Saturday and marching with you guys.
Nice, so we do have somebody who just wants to rip off this form. Is that something that we give to the bus?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, hand that back in too.
Yeah. So we're happy to be here, and we're happy that you guys are in our office and doing the march.
Thank you. Astoundingly wonderful. The thing that you do want to notice though is the way this flap is situated, it covers the first two lines where people are filling in their names. So sometimes people start filling this out, thinking they're filling out the voter registration form. So you just want to make sure that they realize that there is the flap. They can fill out both, but they also have to fill out lines 1 and 2 on, you want to advance me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm on page 8 in the manual, but we're looking at the actual form, so this is as helpful as that. So, line 1 and 2, we've talked about, are you a citizen, will you be 18? Line 3 and 4 is your last name, first name, and this is what's covered by the flag. We've had some adorable questions in high schools when we do this. If I fill out the organ donation, do they take it right now?
Right. I get that all the time. Is there a room in the back? I promise you, I don't have a cooler with me.
The suffix is also something we get questions about. This is not doctor, this is not lawyer, this is junior, the third, whatever. Lines 4, 5, 6, 7. This is birthday, phone number, sex, and email. Items 6 and 7 are optional.
Yes. What if someone's transgender or?
As they identify. That's how they fill it out.
Is that, is it required if they choose not to? Will that invalidate?
Yes, it is required.
But I think they may have changed that, Barb, on the new
I
form.
think they're changing it to optional.
The sex is optional.
Okay, so this is an old form? Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay.
So I don't know what form you're gonna be getting on Saturday.
You're gonna get the new forms.
We have the new forms on Saturday?
Does the choice they make for because have to match any previous identification? It's not match their birth certificate or their passport, it just be how they feel, or does it?
It doesn't have to match. Yep.
Why do they want to know why do you want to know eye color?
Well, they wanna know identifying information. They wanna know the last 4 digits of your social security number also.
Oh,
Eye color. Oh, that's on the organ donation.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just curious.
It follows your driver's license, very similar, because they're also measure those two. It's, I'll just tell you that this is confidential, but it's a legally binding agreement. So they want to make sure that the person who's signing it is actually the person who's registered.
Oh, okay.
So it's just like your driver's license, similar.
Yes.
Remember earlier you said that we should have gotten an ID that we print out and we need in order to get around to ask people to vote.
Yeah.
Like, should we take it to our bag or just keep it in our pockets? Like,
Kiana, can you answer that? She's asking about the volunteer badge thing for the police.
Whatever, who asked? Whatever's easiest for you is whatever's easiest for you. I have advised everyone, I imagine most people have a smartphone. I just got a bit of a snide comment email that not everybody does. But if you do, it is very easy to just make it your screensaver and just do fruit and you're fine. If you have, because I imagine whatever works easiest for you, you just have to have that on you. Tape it on your bag, tape it on your shirt, back of your head, put it on a hat. However the police can identify you. The main point of it is the police need to be able to identify volunteers from marchers. You can't get to me without that. Point blank period.
So they can make that the screensaver?
They can make that the screensaver. Make that your screensaver, or if it's easier for you to print it out, print it out. Don't make any changes to it. As is, and you should be fine. Someone asked that. I don't think it will be a problem. I mean, it's going to be the exact same, just in black and white. So the worst that could happen is they tell you no, and you'll just have to come and find me.
Great questions. Next. Address. So, the address where you live and the address where you receive mail. If it is the same, you only have to fill out line 8. It may be different for college students. It may be different for people who are homeless. So if you ever wanted to do a drive to help register homeless, they can absolutely fill out the address where you live. That's maybe an intersection. That's maybe a shelter. They do, however, need to have an address where they will receive mail. And this is a lot of work that people are doing to get houses of worship or churches or whatever to receive mail on behalf of homeless. If the homeless person has a relative living outside of the state and is willing to accept their mail, that still works. The point of the mail is that once you've applied to vote, you get a postcard from the Board of Elections that says you are now registered. If that postcard gets bounced back and it is not deliverable, you're not registered. So it has to be received someplace. Yes?
So if you're a college student and want to vote in New York City, then you put your dorm as the address where you live, and then you can receive mail either at your dorm or at your parents' address. Is
Right.
that the right way to do that?
And then when we move down to the next one, which line 10, or if you just look at 12, is where they would be changing their address. Your address was, and they would put their parents' house if they're putting their college dorm information in line 8. Voting history, have you voted before and what year? This is, I'm not really sure what this question does, except if you haven't voted in 5 years, like you've missed the presidential elections, then most likely your registration is considered dormant and may fall off the poll books. So that helps understand whether this person needs to re-register or not. If they really can't remember, then it's time to re-register and get them back on the books. Yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I'll give you an example. My daughter moved to New Jersey 22 years ago. And for 22 years, they're still sending her voter information to the home address in New York City. And her name is still on the registrar. When I go vote, she's right below me. And I keep telling them, you know what they tell me? She has to send a letter in to get her names off the books. Meanwhile, she's registered in New Jersey. So they don't remove your name unless you request it.
Can I answer? Because I actually just so happen to actually work for government. So essentially what happened, because I used to work for the state, I now work for Nassau County. So she does have to, there's no connection from New Jersey Board of Elections to New York State Board of Elections. Everything is kept separately, as annoying as that is. So you can tell them, and they'll have a note that she's not here in the state, she's moved, but they cannot legally take her off the voter registration file unless she contacts them herself and provides information to prove that she's moved, she needs to be taken out of New York State registration. She may still receive information, but the state is legally obligated to send everyone information. So she may still be getting notifications about, hey, register to vote, remember, but it's because she hasn't, told them that she's moved and she needs to be taken off the voter registration. But if she goes down to actually try and vote, they'll be like, well, where have you been for 22 plus years? So they have her information, it is still in the book, but if she tried to come back and to vote, they'd kind of be like, where are you coming from?
I agree with you there. I think if she went in to vote, they would let her vote because her name is there.
Mm-hmm.
But that was the only reason I mentioned it. They don't automatically remove your name from the book.
Okay.
From the rolls, I should say.
They don't, the same thing happens to me, but it doesn't affect where you're like currently registered. It's just you're registered.
So that's how you can end up voting twice.
But who's gonna take the time to do that?
Well, we're not advocating for that, for sure. We talked about the change of name, the change of address, previous state or New York County. If you also look back up in 8, it's asking people for the New York State County on that line. This is something you want to make sure is filled in also. People tend to jump over that line. let's go to line 13. This is asking for one or the other, your DMV number or the last 4 digits of your social. It seems as though everyone my age knows their social security number. Everyone younger than me doesn't.
I know mine.
This is the only difficult part when doing voter registration on the street, because you can't remind people to bring that information with them to fill this out. In that case, hopefully they have their driver's license on them if they have a driver's license. If they don't have either, this is a big question of whether to tell them to take it home and fill it out, which is probably the easiest for them, and then we don't get to count it as a completed registration. We will want you to count that it walked away, but we won't count it as a completed registration because we don't know if it'll ever come back. But one reason why we say that is if you take the third option, which is I do not have the driver's license or social security number, and you still want to register this day, that may mean you don't have it on you right now, but most everybody has a social security number, right? They just have to go home and look it up. What would happen for that new voter is they will show up to the polls and they will have to prove that they are a New York City resident. So they will have to bring some kind of proof of residency, whether that's a utility bill or something with their name and address on it. We're not doing photo IDs in New York State. We are, however, trying to prove that you are a resident of this city. And that is getting harder and harder these days as people are not getting printed utility bills and it's all electronic, right? So at this juncture, we're strongly suggesting if they can't remember their number, they might want to take it home and complete it, which would be sad. Yes?
If they check that last box, can they then register for an absentee ballot, since they won't be able to prove their residency in person?
They could probably apply for an absentee ballot. They would have to go probably to the Board of Elections to verify that they are who they are without having this idea at this point. All right, so now we're up to parties. In the training manual on page 30, you don't need to look now, there is a description of all the parties. Who knew we had 2, 4, 6, 8, how many parties do we have in New York State? The party system, the only 2 parties right now that seem to have primaries every year are the Democratic and the Republican parties. The other parties could have primaries if they have competing candidates. So it could happen. We've had to talk about signing up for a party. People have to understand that they can vote in the general election for any candidate on any party line. Doesn't matter what you're enrolled as. We all understand that, right? And you'll see candidates listed on several different party lines. So sometimes, I think like de Blasio was on Democratic and Working Families. So if you want to vote, if you're more aligned with Working Families, but you're a registered Democrat, you can still vote on the Working Families line. And what the candidate will see is how many votes they get based on those different parties. So they see that the interests of their constituents are more aligned with Working Families, or more aligned with Green, or more aligned with whatever you're voting on. That's one way to have your voice a little louder on the when you vote. But if you sign up to be one of those party members on this application, you can only vote in that party's primary. Now, if you notice, there's a party called Independence Party, which we're a little astounded that they allow them to call themselves that. That does not mean no party. That is actually a party, the Independence Party. So if you have a voter who says, I don't want to be affiliated with a party, then they should check off the no party. We see that on the option list. And then below that is absentee, if you want to be an election day worker. Over here is where they are signing. This signature is what will show up on the poll books. So it has to be a signature that they can replicate, and that they will replicate every time they show up to vote. And it should stay in that box. And it should be blue or black ink. And it has to be dated. So at this point, we say, if you're working with the league, we suggest, and on this March, we suggest, would you mind if I checked to make sure that everything was filled out on your form? Would you mind? Usually they are very happy to let us look at it. I mean, it's their private information. We just want to make sure all the boxes are filled so that we make sure that this is a completed registration form. Like that New York County thing always gets missed. Make sure they're signed. Yes?
So if they make a mistake, do they need to have a new application, or can they initial it? Will the Board of Elections accept it if it's crossed out and initialed?
They will accept it, but if it's a real mess, give them a new one. Yeah.
If it's not legible, is that,
If the signature's not legible?
the form's not legible?
If the form's not legible, it has to be legible. That's what you're checking, to make sure it's, you actually see the X's and you actually see, yeah.
If someone can't fill out the form legibly, can you fill it out for them?
You can,
As long as they sign?
yep, yep. And then that's the signature they're gonna use when they go to vote. Yep, yes.
For these New York counties, do you say Brooklyn or Kings?
Kings.
Yeah.
Are we gonna have applications in different languages other than just English?
Very good question, not at the March.
Not March, okay.
They are now available in, I think, 11 languages, and we thought that would be too cumbersome to take to the March.
What would you suggest our course of action be, or our advice be to them in that case then?
If you can speak their language.
That's true.
Tell them to go onto the Board of Elections website and they can download it in their language.
Perfect.
Yeah. And certainly if you're going out into communities that have more language than others, then when you go to pick up your supplies at the Board of Elections, you're going to grab those languages. But we just chose to do everything in English on Saturday. And New Jersey. English and New Jersey. All right, absentee, we've talked about that. You can do absentee voting either in person or by the mail. It's a two-step process to apply by the mail. Let's see what else we got here. Information you provide to the voter afterwards. Let's go. So you now have the completed application. Don't seal it. Okay, we're gonna hand it, you can fold it, but don't seal it for us, okay? Because we need to check, we wanna make sure if it's a upstate voter that we can change the address on it. Because you'll see on the outside of the application, it's only New York City addresses to be sent to. So what we're gonna do, if you're finding somebody from Westchester and you're having them fill out, this application is the same throughout New York State, it's just the address on the back that it's different for each county. So don't seal it so we can see which county it has to be sent to. But you can tell the voter then they will be getting acknowledgement from the Board of Elections in 4 to 6 weeks after we've handed it in. And they can always call if they haven't gotten it. There's also a website they can look it up, and this is in your manual. I also put it on the last page so you have a cheat sheet. Voter lookup, elections, so they can see if they are registered, if it has come in or not. Next slide.
Just going to
Yeah.
the first thing there, so it looks like if you don't have your social with you, and you don't have a license,
Yeah.
that third box, and when you get the postcard, then it's asking you.
Then you have the time, if you're doing it now, you have the time to go to the Board of Elections and clear it up.
Right.
Instead of waiting for election day. But if you don't do that ahead of time, you'll have to do it at the poll site of an election.
So we can tell them that they can deal with it when they get the postcard or at the polls, but that's a hassle.
So Jennifer, just to clarify on that point, I understood that if they have one of those numbers, but don't have it with them, there's an option to actually give them.
You can give them a form and say, please fill it out and do the right thing and sign up.
But if they do not, they don't have either of those numbers, they check the do not have.
And we take it from them, then they're gonna have to prove their residency either before the election or on election day at the polling site.
So technically they're registered, they will have their name at the polling site. They
Correct.
have to prove their.
Correct. Correct.
But they will be notified in advance of.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. If you don't have a printed out, like utility bill or something, what are some acceptable things you can bring? Is all library cards okay?
Yeah, there's a list of stuff on the Board of Election website of what they can bring to prove residency.
That ID in New York is very good, I think, for New Yorkers.
They're not allowing that.
Oh, really?
I know, that's something we're working on too, but they're not allowing that.
Right.
I know. I know, it's crazy. All right, what else? Cards mailed, information, okay. Now, as, let's see if we can move forward on these. Obviously, we've talked about some of this stuff. If you've moved, change your name. We've talked about that. Must report, we've talked about that. Now, if you go to the polls and you believe that you have registered and your name is not in the books, we recommend do not leave that poll site without voting. You will be given, ask for the affidavit ballot. There's no reason to leave that poll site without voting. The affidavit ballot is basically this on the outside of the ballot. You're filling this out again. But your vote does count and they will match it to the application going in.
They'll be able to provide more information about that when you ask for it.
At the poll site?
Yeah.
Yeah. The League of Women Voters has started a new part of our drives, and that is when we've completed this, we ask our new voter or our re-registered voter, would you like us to remind you to vote? So if you go out with one of us, if you go out with us on a different drive, we're not doing this Saturday, we have sheets for people to opt in and give us their cell phone or their email, and we will send out reminders to vote. We're hoping in little ways this might get people to the polls. Because we feel it's pretty easy to get people registered. It's not so easy to get them to vote. The other thing we like to promote at this point of the voter registration drive is tryvoices.com. This is an app you can download, and it's something that the League of Women Voters has worked on developing along with app people. And what we do, in this app it ties to your GPS wherever you are located. It tells you who your legislators are for that area. It gives you contact information for federal, state, and local. In addition, we populate issues that are coming up that might inspire you to give a call or an email or send a tweet to any of your legislators. And it's cool because if you can either put in your own home address so you know who yours are, or you can look it up if you're working in a drive in a borough or a district you're not sure of, you'll know who's the elected officials there. It's a very cool thing.
A lot of that.
So, after the drive, we've talked about what you're doing on Saturday, handing it back and everything. We do the same thing for the League of Women Voter Drives. We bring it, we deliver it directly to the Board of Election after we've counted and made sure everything is clean on it. And what else is in the manual is some information on, excuse me, positions that will be on the ballot in 2018, 2019, 2020. We've given you a few years rolling there. We've given you information on how to use the voting machines if you have a brand new voter and they have very concerned about how to do that. We've given you a glossary of terms. Salaries of our legislators, that's usually a hook on, did you know that your New York State representative earns $79,000? And are you pleased with, you're paying that salary? Are you pleased with how they're representing you? And I've given you a summary page that you can then use at your drive where it gives you the deadlines and some of those websites to look up. So what I'd like to do now is one of our folks had asked about how do you ask people to register to vote. Would you like to help us with this exercise? Sure. And would you like to help us? Okay. So you are going to be the belligerent New Yorker. And you're going to be the enthusiastic voter registration volunteer. And you're going to walk right by her.
Excuse me, ma'am, are you registered to vote in New York?
No, I'm not.
Would you like to be registered to vote?
Sure.
Oh.
Just so you know, you'll never have that situation. She was kind and appropriate.
Exactly. Would you like to try that again? Okay.
Excuse me, ma'am, are you registered to vote in New York?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I'm busy.
Are you sure it's really important that our views are represented with our officials?
Oh, I really can't. I have to meet up with Planned Parenthood.
It only takes a minute, it's a really short application. That's a really great reason, but it's a really short application, you only have to fill out a few lines, it's really easy. I have a pen.
Well, can I take it with me and mail it in?
You can, but if you'd like, I can mail it in for you, so you don't even have to worry about that.
Nice.
Keep going?
Keep going.
I have to fill out the whole application. How long does it take?
Probably only about 5 minutes.
Nice, good.
Okay, can I come back after I finish the march?
You can, you might not have the pleasure of my company.
Don't you want to march knowing you're going to vote? This is awesome. That was great. All right, how about 2 more? Would you like to help us? Okay. Would you like to help us? Okay. What would you like to do?
I want to register you.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me, ma'am, we're registering new voters today and are you registered to vote?
No.
Well, I think maybe it's important that you try to take the time today because, we're gonna have some very important elections coming up very soon. And it only takes a few minutes.
Do you have a pen?
That's great. I'm suspecting that a lot of the people on Saturday are going to be registering, right? These are active people. They're out showing it with their feet. So I'm guessing that the main question you'll be asking is, are you registered at your current address? That's what catches people the fastest.
Right.
Because it combines 2 things, right? They have to realize that, oh, you know what, I did move this year, and maybe I should re-register.
Or change their name.
Or did you change your name? Exactly. The other ones, they're all out there for a reason. I'm not sure you're going to have to convince people to register except for the time element. And it should only take 5 minutes to fill this out, really.
And if they're in the pens anyways.
If they're in the pens, you got them. Exactly. Exactly.
Like how much should we actually be out there trying to register people?
Well, Kiana has her organization about the different zones. I was suspecting that if you're assigned to a block and you and your 4 or 5 volunteers in that block, you'll get a sense pretty soon if you have more, you know, how long you have to do it, you know. I'm saying that you do it until they start marching and then you're done. Or you do it until you're done and then you're done. And if you wanted to get back to your group, you know, I think we're all gonna play it by ear on Saturday, how long it takes. Like I'm guessing, you know, if there's 100 people in the 1,000 people in the block that need re-registering, it will be a lot. I'm thinking there won't be a lot of this activity, but they're gonna hear you talking about it. They're gonna hear that it's important. They may wanna take some applications for their kids. If they have kids going away to college, they may wanna take some home with them to do absentee applications, and that's all good, yeah?
How many applications should we take with us when we go out? 5.
I think we put in 10 or 12 per volunteer, so you're gonna have 4 volunteers per block. So I think we were doing like 50 per block, which means some of the blocks, you may wanna pick up more applications if you're gonna be far away from the bus, that you can't get back and get more. We're gonna have more applications at the bus. You can always send a runner back to get more. I think we were guessing like around 50, 75 per block.
And you were saying if you don't have time or too crowded, you can't get back to the main location, bring them to the main headquarters on West 43rd. When you want that by Monday?
Oh, you can do it that day. We have volunteers waiting for you that day.
Oh, open.
Yeah, we're gonna open it up at 1 o'clock to start receiving, and we're gonna be there till 6. So between 1 and 6, you can drop off at the League's office, which I think we have our address on. Oh, no, go back one. I forgot about that. More stuff we're advocating for. I did bring some information on, if you wanted to have any information on the advocacy we're working on this time. We're really focusing on early voting right now. And the League is doing a big push on calling legislators and stuff. So this is information you may want to have or learn about when you're on the street. You can talk about that with in the pens. Excellent. What else we got? Any other questions? Yes.
I have a question for Kiana, I believe that's your name.
Yeah.
I know that since voting registration is supposed to be non-partisan, does it affect what we wear if we have clothes when we're working and volunteering over the weekend?
Wow, I haven't heard that one before.
I was gonna say, what are you wearing?
Where? Okay. And you know, maybe I can get something.
I know Matter in college, so we learn a lot to do stuff like that.
So, if you're not with the League, because they are nonpartisan, I would think it's a problem. I mean, wear what you want, can't nobody stop you. And, you know, because I mean, keep in mind whatever you wear might either attract more or, you know.
Okay, I didn't want to cross it out.
Yeah. That's a new question. As far as I know, you're fine to wear whatever you want. I'll bring it up, but you know, the Women's March is a nonprofit organization. We can't tell you what you can and can't wear.
And then for the second one, just a question, you said that there's gonna be like teams of 4 per.
They'll be larger, but yeah, there'll be teams and.
Do you guys stand together or are you supposed to stand together?
So each zone has about 5 blocks in it, 4 or 5 blocks in it. So we don't expect you to stand together. But if you know, when you disperse, when you leave my presence, whatever you guys work out is whatever you guys work out. You don't have to, you know, it's a lot of space. And if your group ends up being smaller, you're not going to be able to cover each space. And some people, even if they have been trained, will feel more comfortable to be with someone. And I find in having done my own registrations, having 2 people kind of helps, as opposed to just having one person stand by themselves. So when you get to your zone, you guys can figure that out when you get there. But we don't expect you, oh my God, my new watch.
And there'll be team captains also.
Right.
They may tell you which areas to go in and who to partner up with.
Right.
Like, do you know how many different
So actually, in reading, I got through all of my emails today. My goodness. So in reading my emails, it seems like our numbers have gone up. We have almost about 90,000 marchers
Whoa.
now.
Awesome.
So,
So some people are like individuals, some people are brands, some people
Well,
are with organizations. it's all
right.
different types.
as of right now, I can't really give you a specific number of organizations. Let's just say every single organization that exists that has anything to do with politics, registering to vote, registering to run for office is going to be there, and their grandmothers and mothers and whomever else. So, in doing the voter registration, we have about 5 organizations alone. And, you know, the League of Women Voters has 300 people going, so.
And just in terms of the population, I think last year there was more than a 10-to-1 ratio of registered voters, people that they wanted to walk in. So, and it was 60,000 people last year that registered. Or-
I don't know that.
So, they're looking over now.
Yeah. It's gonna be a big day. It's gonna be awesome. Thank you for volunteering to do this. Thank you for volunteering to be trained. You really need to have everybody trained who's out there doing voter registration. We don't have 300 volunteers, we have 150 volunteers total, 300 marchers, right? So you're part of the 150 volunteers that we're gonna be dispersing.
Is this the second annual march? Because didn't they have one last year?
Yeah. We didn't do voter registration last year, this is a new part of it,
So
yeah.
this is the second annual.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna just be here, it's gonna be like DC and Los Angeles, all over like last year.
Yeah.
Okay, like who organized it? Like,
So, well. See what had happened. Essentially, the Women's March Alliance is an organization that's made up of more than just the Women's March. So there's the Women's March, who did last year's march, and did the march in DC, and have done all of these follow-up groups. The Women's March Alliance is a group of organizations dedicated to women's rights overall, and got together and decided they were going to try and assist and create this year's march, and add the additional proponent of me getting a new volunteer position of the voter registration, having backup plans as, okay, so we've marched, what's next? Registering to vote, what's after that? Calling our legislators, what's after that? You know, running for office. No offense to you. So, the Women's March Alliance is overall a coalition of organizations dedicated to women empowerment in politics and government, if that answers the question.
I was seeing stuff on Facebook and things, I just didn't
Oh,
know
that's the
who
other
it
thing.
was.
There are fraudulent organizations. We've been trying to butt those out. So, you know, the fact that you see me and you're getting emails from us, because there are organizations that are trying to sell things and trying to collect information. They're, you know, the world's made of spies. Yeah.
So it was started by the Women's March Alliance.
Yes. To this year's march is done by the Women's March Alliance.
Last year was done by.
The Women's March.
Women's March, this year, Women's March Alliance.
Yes. So since I am here, I just want to make sure, thank you, Barbara. Thank you so much. For the great training. Most of you, we've got, 4 days? I don't even know what day today is. We've got some hours in between right now and when the actual march commences. You should be receiving an email from me, either, most likely not tonight, I'm going to be honest, probably tomorrow, with information about the image that you can use so that police can identify you, because that's really the main importance of the image. There's a separate location that marchers can enter and another location for volunteers. It's specified for you. We've worked with NYPD to make sure that if they see that volunteer image, they know that you're not a regular marcher. This is where you're supposed to enter to get to your designated area. The email that I'll send will include most likely a bunch of attachments. It'll have the image, it'll have the training manual, it will have 2 maps. You have the general map from the Women's March and my map that I took great time to color code for you guys. And it'll have that zone information of where you're going to be. The reason why you will not have in this email your information about where you're going to be placed is because unfortunately the numbers that I have keep changing as I got new information today. So when you come to 72nd and Central Park West, you have to make sure to see me or see one of hopefully 12 people that will be checking people in to give you your materials. That's the only way you'll know about where you're going. If there are special accommodations that you need, please make sure to respond to the email that I send. If you need a partner, if you speak a different language, if you have a guide dog, or if you need to be somewhere where you can sit, please make sure to let me know, and I'll try to accommodate you as best as I can. Bathrooms are scarce, I'm sorry. Drink water, but be cautious you're drinking water, and I don't know where the nearest bathroom is going to be. A lot of the businesses that will be along the march are going to will have special deals for marchers. I don't know if that will include a free bathroom. It most likely won't. I'm sorry. The Women's March Alliance is trying to get porta potties. It was a big problem last year. We're working on it, but just keep that in mind. Bathrooms are scarce.
So we have to be there between 8:30 and 9:30?
Depending on your shift. So there are 2 shifts. There's a shift 1 is from 10 to 1:30. So your arrival time is 8:30 to 9:30. Shift 2 is 1:30 to 5. So that arrival time is 12 to 1. So you don't have to, obviously I'm not expecting too many people to be there all day. It's organized chaos for the most part. I'm trying my hardest to make it really organized. But I realistically imagine most people will want to march. So, you'll do your shift of voter registration, get as many people registered as you can, and then go on about your day. Just make sure you get the voter registration cards to either myself or to the League of Women Voters. Let me just finish this last point. I'm trying to coordinate so that there are at least 3 drop-off locations for the registration card.
Okay.
So that'll be added on to tonight's call. I am trying to coordinate, so because, it's 28 blocks, if you can't get back to me, or if the Women's March is too far, I'm trying to get a central location at Columbus Circle so that you can get somewhere in between if you can't make the other 2. That's it.
Because now that you have me thinking about it, a couple of months ago when I first filled it out, what shift, I think I picked the later shift. I didn't pick the early morning shift, I picked the later shift.
Okay.
So that would be from,
There's only 2 shifts, so if you're not in the morning, you're in the afternoon, so you're 1:30 to 5. So your check-in time to see me at 72nd at Central Park West, I keep saying it because I need to remember to not say that in the email. Your check-in time will be 12 to 1. As we understand it, there shouldn't be any problems with the railways, so everything should be running on time. Yeah, I know. I know. When I said it, I laughed at myself. It's okay. I say that again because I'm from Long Island and I just don't know anything about trains. Getting here was quite the experience. So I imagine that hopefully everything will be on time. I expect people to be late. I expect people to be early. I'm prepared for the sky to fall on me.
So Keon, I don't think I ever signed up for a shift, so I can just come like morning or afternoon, whichever.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you signed in, you took the training, you registered, did you sign up with the League of Women?
You have different captains on different shifts? Because I didn't have different shifts for my captains.
Well, that's what I have to go home and figure out now, is
Yeah.
because this isn't just a League problem, but I also know that how her and Vote Pro Choice have people that are registered, but with them as opposed to with the march. So I'm hoping that I have, cross your fingers, everyone's information. If I don't, I'm most likely going to defer to you guys. And if someone comes up to me, hopefully you guys can send me your list. And if they're not on mine, I can just check them off on someone else. Any other questions, last minute comments? In the sign-in sheet that Barbara has, please make sure to provide your email. I'm using that to make sure that if I have your name, but some information is missing, or if you need information about what's going to be happening Saturday, make sure that your email signed up so I can add you to the email list.
Oh, I got one more question. No more questions asked, I promise. They were selling like merchandise and stuff.
So-
Are we gonna have t-shirts and stuff?
So, the Women's March Alliance is a donation organization. It's a 501c3. So if you would love to donate some money to pay for the march, that'd be great. As for t-shirts, we do have some. And again, if you want to donate to get the t-shirt, that'd be nice. But that's something that you would go to the website and check out. I don't know if there will be shirts sold the day of. And to be quite honest, if there are, I'm not sure they're from the Women's March. And I'm not sure that money will go back to our organization.
Yeah.
You'll get free stuff though. You'll have like the school band. You get that.
You can wear it any place.
Yes, you know, I got that from Party City.
Giving us an envelope or something to put the completed something else?
Yes, that's what's in your package.
Did you just sign up for something
Yeah.
else?
No.
I did.
So, thank you, Kiana. Thank you, Karen. I have information about the voting early and about the league if you'd like information.